For this part, we're going to talk a bit about hair. How is it that I approach hair, right? And this probably is going to be the shortest video for the course because it's all about tips and recommendations generally. The whole thing is that you want to avoid, for my style, and the camera not focusing, okay, you want to avoid drawing the hair as each individual strand of hair, right? And at least for my style, my recommendation is that you avoid doing this. This is a fairly known recommendation when it comes to drawing hair. You want to avoid treating hair as individual strands, even in the case of long hair. Let's say I have long hair. You want to avoid probably not the best example because the brush pen is very elegant in the brushes, but you want to avoid this messy look of the hair. What you want to do instead is treat hair as another 3D shape. So I'm going to give you two examples. Let's say that I have this character. And I'm drawing the eyes as I just stated in my previous course, where I focus on the upper eyelid, like so. So I have this character, and I'll do the character again to highlight what I'm talking about. You can follow along, of course. And you see here that because the character is drawn sideways, the nose here, and not to divert too much, but the nose here, now it starts to, you start to see the shape in 3D, right? So the nose is essentially a bit like a triangle. So I don't always draw the full nose outline from this side, but sometimes I do. It depends on the flavor that I want to bring the character. So you can do both. You can just draw this part of the nose tip, or you can draw the full bridge. The only thing, as I said before, that I don't recommend that you draw the full nose when seeing the character up in front, because it doesn't look too elegant, I think. It adds a bit of a visual confusion to the drawing that I'm not sure if it aids it. You can see that for the lips, I'm also trying to be deliberate in the amount of lines that I'm using. But yeah, I just drew what is essentially more or less the same character. More or less the same character. And let's say now it comes time to draw the hair. I need to draw the hair, and I'm going to draw some long hair. It looks much better if I'm gonna do what I don't recommend, and then what I recommend in terms of tone for the hair. So my not my recommendation. But I have so many pens, but at the same time I don't have pens. So this is how I would recommend that you don't do. I'm gonna change to the black. And let's say there's the here. You see that I'm drawing every single strand of hair. And then for whatever reason, I see this a lot. People will do occasionally, I see this, which lines that don't match the direction of the hair, which granted they can be useful in certain contexts. If, for example, you're trying to add some shadow here, it depends on how proficient you are with your lines. It can look elegant, though it's also very apparent when they're being used randomly by the person. So yeah, so just drawing the hair, the individual strands, and I'm not focusing on the shape. This is how I would say no. My recommendation not to do this. This would be my recommendation. My recommendation is that instead you treat the hair as shapes. So for example, these shapes, right? This would be my recommendation. So I have this character and I have this shape. You see here this three-dimensional shape where if I take apart some of the elements from the hair, there's some 3D to them, right? So for example, there's this big piece of hair right here. It's a bit like this. Same for here, this piece. And then, for example, these strands of hair, they are a bit like tubes. I mean, they are tubes. They have a shape to them, a 3D volume to them. So this is a fairly known recommendation that, yeah, my recommendation is that you approach hair like this in big 3D shapes. Big 3D shapes. Of course, you add a couple of strand lines for flavor, for adding some additional, yeah, flavor, texture to it, right? Texture to it. I think that's important as well. But you don't want to go overboard with drawing every single line of the hair. It looks for an uneven, not elegant drawing. As I said before, technically you can make the sensation that of shadows by drawing some individual strands in places where it's darker. That can work. If you are proficient with your lines, additionally, you can also add a couple of horizontal lines for some cross hatching. That can also look good. That can also look good. The idea is also to play around with it, play around with the style. by adding some cross-hatching where you cross the lines. But the important thing is that for the most part, the lines that you're drawing, they follow along this shape that you have here, this 3D shape that you have. This is important. When talking about short hair, the same principle applies for the most part. So I'm drawing this character here. Bit of an older character. So in this case, and let me add the ear as well. In this case, for the shorter hair, if I were to draw shorter hair, it would follow along the same principles of the 3D shape. It's just that the 3D shape in this case is a bit different, right? It is shorter hair, so you would have the sideburns here, but the sideburns are a bit like a rectangle. Right, and then a couple of hairs here. Then it moves up here depending, you might have this or you might just have a straight line. It really depends, so try around with both. Maybe the character has a couple of loose hairs here. It feels like me starting to become a bit bald here. But yeah, you see that I drew the big shape. And I added a couple of loose hairs here for flavor. But the shape itself is a bit like a mixture of multiple rectangles. Then you add a couple of lines for flavor to add the dimension of hair. And then you also start looking at yourself, like for example here, I'm losing hair, so you know, hair comes from here, a couple of lines for flavor. You can make it more spiky, for example, or you can make it so that the spikes actually go upwards. Depends on how the character has the hair that day, right? The important thing is to mix it up, try different things. And when talking about the effects of, this is also important to discuss, when talking about the effects of, for example, having a, what's the name, a hair tie, a hair clip, right? Let's say I have here my character. I'm gonna draw sideways so that it's easier. Let's say the character has a ponytail. So again, I treat it as big 3D shape. The ponytail works like this. It goes all the way here. And then the hair starts, the number of lines I intensify here in this point where the pony, the ring for the ponytail is. So the number of lines I intensify. And because it's a ball, the head's a ball, right? The lines follow along the shape of the hair, the shape of the ball. So you need to also take that. So there's here, and then there's the ponytail itself, which again, it's just a rather big or small 3D shape. The hair here on the base of the neck starts to fizzle out, so there's that. There's this muscle here, the sternocleido, I forgot the name, in English at least. So you have this muscle here, then you have the clavicules, and then you have the shoulder. Yeah, and also the lines here would also leave. This implies torsion. This implies some type of stress on the hair being applied. So yeah, one of the things that, again, looking outside, looking into people, exploring different hairstyles, right? How is it that people style their hair? Also paying attention to where the hair, the root of the hair is, right? The direction of where the person is moving. So for example, if the person is running, so if the character is running, let's say, sorry, the camera is not focusing right now for whatever reason. Sometimes it does that. But let's say the camera is, the person is running, right? The hair flows in this direction. In this direction, right? It's a bit like the tail of a comet. That also adds to the sense of dynamics to a character. So try it as well. Try drawing characters, try different hairstyles, try seeing what is it that you also like to draw. Maybe double ponytail, small ponytail. Yeah. For the hair, really, recommendation, don't draw individual strand lines as much as you can, add them for flavor. Once you have the basic shape of the hair laid out, this is very important, this is my main recommendation. And treat hair as a three-dimensional volume as well, alongside the rest of the body, even when talking about short hair. This is very important. This allows your hair to look aesthetically pleasing to the eyes, and not so much a collection of random lines that were laid there for no rhyme or no reason. Yeah, this was the chapter on hair. Let's go to the next lesson.